Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Kalika and you're gonna be a super spicy person after watching this video. Assistant from Hell. Let me preface this by saying I'm still going through some mental issues because of what happened in this story. The background. I was born with cataracts that later became glaucoma when I turned 5. After some years, something happened that caused me to lose all vision in my left eye. This meant that I'll need an assistant for the rest of my education. Now that you're all informed, the story. When I was starting middle school, my parents found an assistant to help me with moving around in my school. I'll call her Ella for simplicity's sake. Anyway, Ella was friendly to me and my parents, so they didn't have to worry. Ella did her job and she was very friendly with me. And then it began. One day, Ella didn't come to school. She called my dad saying that she got in an accident on the road. It was fine. She got in an accident and it wasn't her fault. I spent the first 2 weeks of school trying my damnedest to explain why I couldn't write the work and give a convincing argument and walk around without bumping into every wall in person. On top of that, Ella became more and more hostile as the months went by. She began telling me awful things about my appearance, my personality, and she even talked crap about my parents to other teachers who were just as scummy as her. The only reason why I didn't say anything was because she made me think that doing so would get me expelled. Me being a stupid 13-year-old, I believed her. Needless to say, I was miserable. The straw that broke the camel's back was the day where she was so angry that she slapped me. I was done. The revenge. I told my dad about everything. The absences, the slander, everything. When I told him, he went absolutely ape and we went straight to the principal. After telling her everything that happened, we found out that Ella was present to write herself up as present, but she never arrived to help me. We also found out that she had faked most of her reasons for absence. After a long investigation that took 2 years to actually prove, we took Ella to court. I only had to testify every single detail of what she did and what she said. Long story short, we won that case and Ella went to prison for 3 years. After word got out of what Ella did, my family had heard that her friends and family basically disowned her. She also lost the remaining custody of her kids, which went directly to her ex-husband, who works as a vendor that passes by my school. Ella became forgotten garbage. It's been almost a whole year since Ella went to prison, but I sometimes still hear all the terrible things she said. Thanks to her, I'm scared to make decisions because I can't get her words out of my mind. I'm going to start school soon. Maybe I'll finally get that demon woman out of my head. Edit. Thank you all for your kind words. Honestly, I thought this was going to get ignored. At the time of writing this, I'm going to start my second year of high school. I'm just happy that even strangers on the internet are willing to say such nice things. Thank you all for the support. I read through some of the comments on this post, and apparently Ella started becoming more hostile when OP was learning how to use a cane and becoming more independent. My guess is that Ella was such a nasty person that she couldn't handle seeing anyone succeed. Wrong career path if you ask me. Jesus. Always have a backup. Hi all, first time poster on the sub and relatively new to Reddit on the whole, so apologies in advance for any screw ups on my part. This happened over a decade ago now. I would have been 15 or so at the time. I was in my sophomore year of high school and this all takes place in my general science class for the year. Things started off quite well in that class with a nice teacher who was passionate about her topic. Unfortunately, for one reason or another, a good 6 weeks later classes were shuffled and we ended up with a new teacher. Our new teacher was an older guy, certainly less passionate and kind of dull, but otherwise harmless. To provide a little background, I was certainly a troubled student in high school, and troubled is putting it lightly. I was a great student, providing the teacher wasn't disrespectful and was actually interested in what they were teaching. There was nothing worse for me than a grumpy, bored and disrespectful teacher. Now, this second gentleman was certainly bored and maybe a tad grumpy sometimes, but I wouldn't say he was necessarily disrespectful. He wasn't a good teacher, but he wasn't terrible either. He didn't ignite my passion for the subject by any means, but he was adequate. Then, for the second time that year, things got shuffled around on us and we were on our third teacher. This time, a brand new teacher at our school, a recent immigrant from the UK. We'll call her Mrs. Snow. She was middle-aged with reddish hair and a scowl so cold she could extinguish the sun. Mrs. Snow got into her routine quickly. She made it very clear she would tolerate no misbehaviour of any form, and included within the category of misbehaviour was interruption, and this meant any kind. I observed several students, even well-behaved attentive ones, sent directly to the dean's office. A dean being someone who is essentially in charge of your year group, with no warning or prior offence for having the sheer gall to sneeze while she spoke. And it didn't matter how much you tried to cover it up. A friend of mine was unwell one day, but doing his best to make it through his classes. Unfortunately for him, he had quite a dry cough, and hell hath no fury like Mrs. Snow. Poor guy was jettisoned before the class even had a chance to be seated. And of course, it should go without saying that I was not on her good books. She was rude, unreasonably hostile, and clearly bored to tears by her subject. I don't recall how many lessons I saw to completion, but I certainly became intimately familiar with the dean's office that year. My favourite story to tell are the days when she was in a bad mood, and if she wasn't horrible enough already. I remember more than once she kicked out the entire class. God knows what she spent the rest of the lesson doing, but I remember the poor receptionist in the dean's office. Her eyes practically bulged right out of her head as she saw a Congo line of 30-something students making their way to the office, all requiring to be written up by her and seen by the year's dean. I can't imagine she was too fond of Mrs. Snow either, but the dean came to the wonderfully well thought out conclusion that the students were clearly the problem, not the teacher. Now, one day during class, I was seated near the front of the class, right next to the computer Mrs. Snow was using to deliver her wonderfully monotone lecture on God only knows what bollocks. I happened to notice a small red pen drive sticking out the front of the machine. While she wasn't looking and most of the class was distracted, I bent down, pretending to grab something from my backpack which was on the floor below my stool, but quietly reached over and pulled the drive from the computer and stuffed it in my backpack before anyone could notice. I don't know why I did it, just being a jerk I guess. I figured it's just a pen drive, she can get a new one. Later that day, I plugged the drive into one of the PCs in our library to browse the contents. Various things related to her classes were scattered throughout, but then something in particular caught my eye. Her immigration documents. I took a short peek and discovered her visa was due to expire in only a couple of months and that she had a new folder in which she was assembling her documentation for her next application. Oh crap, I thought. This flash drive was hot property. If she found out I had this, I would be in serious trouble. The obvious solution of quietly returning the drive never occurred to me. At first I removed the red sleeve from the drive, hoping it would be unrecognisable. Even then, I was still nervous, so between classes one day I threw it on the roof of one of the buildings, and not a moment too soon. She'd found out, and someone had dobbed me in. I don't think I had ever been sent to the deans that fast in my entire school life. I was grilled, kinda like those CIA, FBI interrogations you see on TV. I didn't crack, denied all knowledge and responsibility. They conducted a search of my backpack and found nothing. Just as well I tossed it. I was incredibly well known to the dean at that point and I could tell she was more than ready to believe I'd done it, but she couldn't prove it. Nobody could prove it. It was all he said, she said. So I was let go. I continued having classes with Mrs. Snow. She was incredibly hostile towards the entire class after that, but especially me. More than once during this time, I got sent to the deans for absolutely no reason whatsoever. The referral slip she sent me with always claimed some utter crap that never happened, and the deans would gobble that crap up eagerly. Until one day, we had a reliever, and the next day, and the day after. That reliever became our new permanent teacher for the remaining 2 months or so of the year. There was never any explanation as to why. Rumours began to spread, and eventually I learned the proper truth. The copy of her immigration documents in that pen drive were the master copy. She had no backups, hard copies or duplicates. New Zealand's immigration system is ridiculously pedantic in that you need to resubmit all of the evidence from previous visas you've been granted again when you apply for a new one. She no longer had any of it. She was missing crucial documentation to retain her visa status, and as such, her visa was declined and she was left or removed from the country. I had no reason to suspect she wouldn't have backups. Usually you'd use a pen drive as a backup and have a master copy on a computer somewhere. This was in the days before cloud storage was a thing, and pen drives were quite small in capacity and not particularly reliable at that. I remember having a few die on me during those years. Besides, what if you lost it? Anybody could poke through your crucial documents. It just seems so unlikely that this would have been the case, and it's what I assumed when I tossed the thing. But I was wrong, and she was never seen again. And that's the story of how I, accidentally or coincidentally, got one of the worst teachers ever not only out of my school, but removed from my entire country. Remember kids, always, always, always have a backup. Edit. Hello all. To clarify and expand upon a few points. Number 1. A few people have pulled me up on my Reddit account being several years old, despite me saying I'm quite new. I registered it quite a long time ago, I don't remember why, but I haven't actively used Reddit in any way until maybe a month or two ago, and this is probably the first topic I've created. Number 2. To clarify, I was just being a little jerk and stealing a flash drive. I had no knowledge of what was on it until later. I was also quite severely mentally ill in high school, and this was quite some time ago. It wasn't as understood nor tolerated as it is now. I don't know why I was feeling the way I was, I don't know why I was acting it. It was a turbulent and horrible few years for me. When I saw the documents on the drive, my first thought was, I shouldn't have this and I cannot be caught with it. I had no way of knowing she had no backup copy, and perhaps assumed having other copies of something as important as that would be common sense. At no point was it my intention to have her deported. It was more just a small thing that due to a number of circumstances, many of which were beyond my control, snowballed completely out of control and led to that. Number 3. I have considerable regret that my actions caused her deportation, particularly more so as I've grown older. She was a horrible human being, but she didn't deserve that. It's something I wish never happened. Number 4. I don't think a single person, staff or student alike, missed her. I seem to recall some seniors throwing a party over it. I remember one of my teachers that year was asked about it by another student. She kept quite tight-lipped about the whole thing, but she struggled to hide her smile. Number 5. Writing could have been a bit better, I know, but I typed this all out while I was bored at work, so kept leaving and coming back to it, and didn't really have my full attention on it at any time. She did sound like a pretty nasty human who just really didn't want to teach. Sending someone to the dean's office for sneezing is one of the silliest things I can imagine, but for the dean to take the teacher's side in all of this was stupid. OP may not be happy that they got her deported, but if the staff went as far as having a party because she was gone, well, I think that speaks volumes. Okay, so that's all for r/NuclearRevenge. I really hope you did enjoy it. As always, if you do want to see more content like this, then please do subscribe. My Twitter, Discord, and Patreon links are in the description, and any support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching.